The sound of little feet pattering across the wooden floor fills the living room as the sun spills through the windows. Balloons sway slightly in the soft breeze from the ceiling fan. On the table, a birthday cake with blue icing reads, "Happy first birthday, Leo." I watch my son laugh as Stephen lifts him high into the air. It's hard to believe a whole year has passed since the day he was born.
Since that day.
The day everything came crashing down, and then, finally, came back together. Hi, my name is Vanessa Carter, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a mother, a wife, and a survivor of the kind of family hurt that doesn't leave bruises on the skin, it leaves scars on the soul. Today I live in a home filled with love. But to understand how we got here, you need to know what happened. Because exactly 1 year ago, I was 8 months pregnant, barely holding myself together at my sister's wedding. I was humiliated, assaulted, and left bleeding in front of hundreds of people by the very people who were supposed to love me the most. My own parents. My sister. And it wasn't the first time they had broken me. I grew up in a house where my name was often spoken last, or not at all. My mother, Barbara, cared more about how her lipstick looked than how I felt. My father, Charles, sat at the dinner table like a statue, nodding only when Jessica, my younger sister, spoke.
And Jessica?
She was the golden child. The beautiful one. The one who got applause for breathing.
Me? I was just there.
No one noticed when I got accepted to college on my own. No one celebrated when I started my event planning business from scratch. And when I told them I was pregnant, you'd think I announced a death. You're pregnant? With that job? Who's going to take care of you? My mother didn't even fake a smile. My father just turned the page of his newspaper. That's when I stopped expecting anything from them. But then came Jessica's wedding. The perfect, glittering wedding of the family's perfect daughter. I should have ignored the invitation. I should have protected myself. But I didn't. I walked into that hall, 8 months pregnant, holding my husband's hand and still foolishly hoping that maybe this time they would see me, welcome me, acknowledge me. I had no idea that day would change everything. 2 weeks before the wedding, the invitation arrived in a white silk envelope, embossed with gold lettering and tied with a blush pink ribbon. The card was expensive, flawless, and theatrical, just like everything Jessica did. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Jessica Carter and Brandon Lively. Stephen had found it in the mailbox, brought it inside, and placed it gently on the kitchen table. I stared at it in silence, my fingers tracing the edge of the ribbon without untying it. "Do you want to go?" he asked gently, already knowing the answer wasn't simple. A part of me wanted to toss it in the trash. Another part, the wounded daughter still clinging to some thread of hope, thought, maybe this time, they'll treat me like I matter. But I knew better. I had been through this before. Family dinners where no one asked how I was doing, holiday parties where my presence felt like an obligation, not a welcome. I looked up at Stephen. "I don't want to regret not going." He smiled and placed his hand over mine. "Then we'll go. Together. But if you feel even a little uncomfortable, we leave, no explanations. Just say the word." That's what I loved about him. No games. No pressure. Just presence. On the morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, struggling to zip up the soft navy blue gown I'd chosen. It was the only dress that felt both elegant and breathable enough for my heavily pregnant body. I was 36 weeks along, and my lower back ached constantly. My belly was full, round and beautiful, but it came with swelling, stiffness, and exhaustion. Still, I did my hair, applied some light makeup, and slid on the small sapphire earrings Stephen had gifted me last year on our anniversary. I looked strong. Tired, but strong. As we drove to the venue, Stephen kept his hand resting on my leg, occasionally glancing over at me, as if silently checking in. I appreciated his quiet concern. I had already rehearsed the smiles I'd need to wear, the polite nods, the forced pleasantries. What I wasn't prepared for was the sheer performance of the event itself. The moment we pulled up to the Evergreen Estate, a grand mansion-turned-event hall on the edge of town, I felt it. That old feeling. Like I didn't belong here. The parking lot shimmered with luxury cars. Guests walked up the marble steps in gowns that glistened under the morning sun. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, women from Barbara's bridge club, men from Charles's business circle, but no one looked my way. Inside, everything was white and gold. Huge crystal chandeliers, flower arrangements bursting with imported roses, tall ivory candles flickering on every surface. It was stunning and suffocating. "Just breathe," Stephen whispered. "We won't stay long." We walked in and were greeted, not by my parents, not by my sister, but by one of Jessica's assistants. She gave us a practiced smile and handed us a small envelope with our table number. It read, "Reserved for overflow seating." Overflow, like luggage. As I scanned the ballroom, my eyes locked onto my mother. She stood near the stage, dressed in a designer ivory gown with diamond accents, her hair swept up into a flawless chignon. She looked cold, unreachable. Then I saw Jessica, in a floor-length blush wedding dress that shimmered like silk water, surrounded by photographers and bridesmaids in matching designer gowns. I smiled faintly. I wasn't jealous of her beauty or her attention. I was just tired of pretending it didn't hurt. Hurt that my parents hadn't asked me once during my pregnancy how I was feeling. Hurt that they never offered help. Hurt that they still made me feel like I was a burden in my own family. And I hadn't even realized that this day would bring all that buried pain to the surface and rip it wide open. Stephen helped me toward our assigned table, tucked in a far corner of the ballroom near the hallway leading to the kitchen. It wasn't even within view of the main stage. The linens were wrinkled. The cutlery was mismatched. Compared to the shimmering crystal and satin centerpieces everywhere else, our table looked like a forgotten afterthought. Stephen didn't say anything, but I could feel the tension in his hand as he pulled out my chair. I smiled at him softly. "It's fine," I whispered. "We knew this would happen."
He didn't argue.
He just leaned over and kissed my forehead. "I'm going to step outside for a minute," he said, checking his phone. "I need to return this call before the ceremony starts. Too loud in here." I nodded and watched him head toward the exit. A few minutes later, I stood up slowly, needing to stretch. That's when I heard her voice behind me. "Vanessa." I turned. There she was, Jessica. Her gown sparkled under the light, and her perfect curls were pinned into a messy yet intentional updo. She looked like a magazine cover bride. Her lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "You're really showing, aren't you?" I blinked. "I'm 9 months in," I replied calmly. "He's healthy." She nodded slowly, then glanced down at my dress with clear disapproval. "You couldn't find anything more flattering?" I bit the inside of my cheek and looked away. The music had lowered as people were taking their seats. Photographers milled about, positioning themselves for the perfect bridal entrance. Everything was rehearsed. Everything was curated. Except for me. "Jessica," I said quietly, "I don't want any problems today. I'm here because I care about you, even if you don't care about me." That did something to her. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then prove it," she said suddenly. "That centerpiece over there?" She pointed toward a tall, ornate marble vase placed near the main aisle. "It needs to be moved closer to the front. The photographers said it's blocking the shot." I stared at her. "You want me to move that? It's not that heavy. I mean, unless pregnancy has made you completely useless." I froze. My hands trembled slightly at my sides. I looked around. No one else was paying attention. It was like the entire room had tuned us out. "Jessica, I'm 37 weeks pregnant," I said slowly. "I shouldn't be lifting anything heavy, and you know that." She took a single step toward me, lowered her voice, and hissed, "Then why are you even here?" I took a breath and turned slightly to walk away. But before I could take a second step, she shoved me. It wasn't playful. It wasn't gentle. It was deliberate. The crowd gasped. My body twisted sharply, and my balance gave way. I stumbled to my knees, a sudden, sharp pain exploding across my lower belly and back. Then, I felt it. Warm liquid soaked through my dress, pooling quickly beneath me on the marble floor. Gasps echoed around me as the entire ballroom fell into a stunned silence. A waiter dropped a tray. Somewhere, a camera clicked. Jessica stepped back, her eyes wide with shock or fear. I couldn't tell. From across the room, my mother, Barbara, let out a horrified whisper. "What have you done?" And then Jessica screamed at me. "You ruined my wedding." I could barely breathe. My chest heaved. My dress clung to my legs, soaked in fluid. People started whispering, pulling out their phones, backing away like I was diseased. "You should have stayed home," Jessica shouted. And just as I tried to push myself up on shaking arms, I saw him. My father. He stormed through the crowd, eyes wide with fury. And then, without hesitation, he grabbed the nearest thing in reach. A folded tripod. Before I could even register what was happening, he swung it down hard, onto my head. The sound of the tripod striking my skull was sickening, a heavy, metallic crack that echoed across the marble floors. For a second, the world went silent. My ears rang, my vision blurred, and a warm stream trickled down the side of my face. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was stunned, not just from the blow, but from the sheer disbelief that my father had actually hit me. In public. At a wedding. While I was 9 months pregnant. I remember hearing gasps. Someone screamed. Glass shattered somewhere in the background. My body began trembling as I collapsed fully to the floor, my knees giving out under me. My soaked dress clung to my skin, the pain in my belly now joined by a sharp, pulsing throb at the back of my skull. And then came the whispers. Did he just hit her? Oh my God. She's bleeding. She's pregnant. What the hell is wrong with them? Out of the chaos, I heard Jessica's voice shrieking again. You just had to make today about you, didn't you? This is MY Day. I could barely register what she was saying, but I saw her expression. She wasn't panicking over my injury. She was panicking about her photos, her reputation, her Instagram story. Then came my mother, heels clacking rapidly on the floor. She crouched beside me, not to comfort me, but to hiss through clenched teeth. Get up. Don't make a scene. You've embarrassed us enough. I looked up at her, dazed, blood dripping from my hairline. And in that moment I realized, they didn't see me as family. They didn't see me as human. I was just an inconvenience. Suddenly, a familiar voice roared across the room, one filled with rage and panic. Vanessa? It was Stephen. He charged through the stunned crowd like a man possessed. His eyes locked on me lying in a pool of fluid and blood, and his face twisted in horror. He dropped to his knees beside me. Oh my God. Who did this to you? He whispered, his hands trembling as he touched my face, checking for consciousness, for movement, for anything. I could barely speak. I just stared up at him, blinking through tears. Then a dozen voices began shouting at once. It was her sister. Her water broke, and then her father hit her. She needs an ambulance right now. Stephen stood up like a man on fire, eyes blazing. Call 911, he roared.
Now.
He pulled out his phone himself and dialed as he shouted. Yes, this is an emergency. My pregnant wife has been physically assaulted. She's bleeding, her water broke. She needs medical attention immediately. And the attackers are still here. Within moments, chaos turned into urgency. People finally put their phones away and started moving. A guest, someone I didn't recognize, rushed to grab a napkin for my head. A younger man took off his jacket and placed it under my neck to elevate me. Somewhere in the background, a woman's voice shouted, "Someone stop that man. He hit a pregnant woman." But my father had already retreated to the corner, hands shaking, trying to explain himself to no one. Jessica was crying now, but not over me. She kept wailing. This isn't fair. She ruined everything. This was supposed to be my perfect day. Stephen knelt back down beside me, held my hand tightly, and whispered, "They're on their way, baby. I'm right here.
You're going to be okay.
I promise." And for the first time since I arrived at that cursed wedding, I believed someone. The wail of sirens sliced through the tension hanging in the ballroom. In less than 5 minutes, 2 police officers and a paramedic team burst through the main entrance. The moment they saw me lying on the floor, blood streaking down my face, my dress soaked, my husband cradling me protectively. The mood shifted from chaos to controlled action. "Step back, everyone. Clear the area," a paramedic shouted, kneeling beside me. Officer Grant, tall and composed, scanned the room sharply. "Who did this to her?" he demanded. A dozen hands pointed at my father, Charles. "He hit her with that tripod," someone said. "She's pregnant." She was already on the floor when he attacked her. Stephen stood, still shaking but composed. "She's 37 weeks pregnant. Her water broke after she was pushed by her sister, and then her father hit her in the head. She's been bleeding and in pain for the last 10 minutes. I want them all charged." The officers didn't hesitate. Charles was handcuffed right there on the dance floor. His face turned pale. Barbara tried to intervene, raising her voice. "This is a misunderstanding. You can't arrest him in front of all these people." Officer Grant calmly turned to her. "Ma'am, assaulting a pregnant woman is not a misunderstanding." Then came Jessica. She had collapsed into a decorative chair, her makeup running, her dress wrinkled, her sobs shallow and selfish. She fell. "It wasn't accident. I didn't mean to push her. It was her fault. She made this whole thing about her." But her voice cracked under the weight of the truth, and the smartphones that had recorded the entire scene left no room for denial. Officer Grant approached her next. "We've received witness reports and video evidence that you initiated physical contact that led to this woman's injury. You're coming with us as well." Jessica screamed as they cuffed her. "You can't do this to me. It's my wedding." Stephen muttered under his breath, kneeling next to me again as the paramedics prepared the stretcher. Barbara, still in denial, stepped forward to argue again, but another officer stepped in. "Ma'am, you verbally harassed the victim while she was bleeding on the floor. You're being detained for obstruction and suspected complicity in abuse." Now all three of them, my mother, my father, and my sister, were handcuffed and let out through the same entrance they once walked through like royalty. And then came the final blow to their perfect day. Brandon's family, Jessica's would-be-in-laws, had witnessed everything. His mother stood near the door, arms folded, her expression a storm of fury and disgust. "This wedding is off," she announced. "We will not be tying our name to a family capable of this." Someone gasped. Jessica's face twisted in horror. No, please. Don't do this. We've already spent." "You've spent your character," Brandon's mother snapped. "And it's bankrupt." And with that, they turned and walked out. I was lifted onto the stretcher, Stephen walking beside me, holding my hand tightly. One paramedic pressed gauze gently to my temple, while the other monitored my vitals. "We're taking you to St. Grace Hospital," one of them said. "You're stable, but we're prepping the maternity unit just in case." Stephen kissed my hand. "I'm with you all the way." As the ambulance doors closed and the chaos of the ruined wedding faded behind us, I looked up at the ceiling of the ambulance and whispered, "Let the perfect image fall apart. I don't need their approval anymore. I have my real family now." The ambulance sped through the streets, sirens blaring above my head, but inside the vehicle everything felt eerily still. One paramedic monitored my vitals, the other kept an eye on the fetal heart rate monitor. I clutched Stephen's hand with all the strength I had left. "You're doing great, Vanessa," the paramedic said gently. "The baby's heart rate is steady. We'll be at the hospital in 5 minutes." Stephen's face was close to mine. His voice was soft but shaken. "I'm so sorry. I should have never left your side. I had no idea they'd—" I squeezed his hand back. "You didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. "They did." I don't remember much of the ride after that. Just the lights overhead, the soft beep of the monitor, and the strange calm that settled over me. It wasn't peace. It was focus. A kind of numb strength that only women in labor or war zones understand. By the time we reached St. Grace Hospital, the maternity team was already waiting. They moved quickly, efficiently. Dr. Lisa Bennett, the very same doctor who had been handling my prenatal care, appeared by my side in scrubs and a protective mask. "Vanessa," she said warmly but firmly, "you're safe now. We're going to take care of you and your baby. Stephen was allowed to remain by my side through everything. As they wheeled me into the labor and delivery room, he kept whispering, "You're strong. You're brave. He's almost here." The contractions came fast. The trauma had jump-started labor. Hours blurred together. Pain, breathing, gripping Stephen's arm, voices telling me to push, to hold, to breathe again. My body was exhausted, but my heart refused to stop fighting. And then,
he cried.
the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. My son, Leo, came into the world with a strong, healthy scream at just past 2 a.m. the following morning. His tiny fists waved in the air, his skin flushed and perfect. Dr. Bennett gently placed him on my chest, and I remember sobbing, not just from the physical release, but from the emotional one too. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking his soft cheek. "Welcome to a better world." Stephen leaned over, tears streaming down his face. He kissed Leo's forehead, then mine.
"You did it," he said.
"You did everything." We stayed in the hospital for 4 days, long enough for me to fully recover from the blow to my head, the labor, and the emotional trauma. I was monitored closely, given time to heal, and surrounded by kind nurses who treated me not like a scandal but like a human being. And during those quiet nights, holding Leo close in my arms, listening to Stephen snore softly on the pull-out chair, I realized something. They could humiliate me. They could ignore me. They could even try to break me. But they would never silence me again. And the moment I was discharged, gently wheeled out of the hospital with Leo sleeping soundly in his carrier, I turned to Stephen and said, "It's time to get justice." He nodded without hesitation. "Let's go see the lawyer." 2 days after I was discharged from St. Grace Hospital, Stephen and I walked into the office of attorney Mark Wilson, a firm and focused man with eyes that didn't flinch when I told him the truth. I held Leo in my arms, his small body sleeping peacefully against my chest, unaware of the storm he had been born into. "We're not just filing a report," I told the lawyer. "I want to press full charges. For everything." Mark didn't need convincing. He had already seen the footage. Multiple videos from the wedding had gone viral across social media. The moment I fell, Jessica's screaming, my father swinging the tripod at my head, and the panicked rush of guests. It had over 2 million views across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And the public reaction? Brutal.
People were outraged.
Women's rights groups, nurses' associations, and parenting forums condemned the violence. People I had never met were calling for justice in my name. I didn't feel proud of that attention, but I felt validated. "We'll pursue charges of aggravated assault," Mark explained, "and include endangerment of an unborn child, public violence, and emotional abuse. With the video evidence and eyewitness accounts, this is open and shut." We filed the case that day. What followed was a series of hearings, depositions, and court dates. I didn't hide. I showed up to every one of them, with my head high and Leo in a carrier on Stephen's chest. The courtroom whispers didn't bother me. The judgmental glances from my parents' former friends didn't scare me. What mattered was what the judge heard, and what the jury saw. My mother, Barbara, tried to frame the incident as a misunderstanding. My father, Charles, claimed he lost control in the heat of the moment. Jessica played the victim card, crying about her ruined wedding and how no one understood the pressure she was under. But their crocodile tears crumbled under the weight of truth. The security footage, guest recordings, and dozens of witness testimonies painted a clear picture. They had humiliated, endangered, and physically assaulted a full-term pregnant woman, their own daughter and sister, in front of hundreds. The final verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. The judge's voice was calm, but firm. "Barbara Carter, Charles Carter, and Jessica Carter, based on the evidence presented, this court finds you guilty of all charges. You are each hereby sentenced to state prison, with no eligibility for early parole." This court also acknowledges the emotional and physical trauma inflicted on Vanessa Carter and her newborn child, Leo Carter. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. Stephen squeezed my hand. Leo slept peacefully. They were going to prison, all 3 of them. Not because of revenge. Not because of pride. Because it was finally time the world saw what I had endured for years, and because I refused to stay silent anymore. After the verdict, everything changed, not just legally but emotionally. For the first time in my life, I felt what true safety meant. No more walking on eggshells. No more waiting for a call that never came. No more pretending I wasn't hurt. Barbara, Charles, and Jessica, the people who were supposed to protect and love me, were now behind bars. The justice system had done its part. Now, it was time for us to heal. Stephen and I moved back into his childhood home, a cozy two-story house with a wraparound porch and a garden that bloomed year-round. His parents had passed a few years earlier, but the home still felt warm, like it was waiting for a family to bring it back to life. That family was us. I decorated Leo's nursery with soft blue walls, stars on the ceiling, and hand-painted animal murals I made during his naps. Every brushstroke was a small declaration. You are safe. You are wanted. You are free. Stephen went back to work on a flexible schedule, and I slowly eased into rebuilding my event planning business from home. But this time, I didn't bury myself in work to escape the pain. I worked because I loved it, and because Leo deserved a mother who still dreamed. My days became filled with soft giggles, lullabies, and stroller walks in the neighborhood park. We started attending a new church, one where people didn't whisper behind your back or judge you by last names. The community welcomed us with open arms. Some had even followed the case online and came up to me, saying, "You're so brave. You did the right thing. Your son will grow up proud of you." But the most powerful validation came in silence, in the way Stephen looked at me each night, or the way Leo reached for me when he was sleepy. We began to create traditions of our own. Friday evening pizza nights. Sunday morning pancakes. Random Tuesday cuddles on the living room couch while watching cartoons. Our house was not perfect. There were sleepless nights and messy diapers and bills to pay. But it was ours. And it was real. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. The sun filtered softly through the windows, casting golden streaks across our living room. Balloons were tied to the chairs. A string of "Happy Birthday, Leo" hung across the mantel, and the smell of vanilla frosting filled the air. Stephen stood by the kitchen counter, lighting the last candle on a small blue and white cake we'd made together the night before. Leo, now walking with wobbly excitement, toddled across the rug in his dinosaur onesie, giggling at the sound of his own footsteps. I stood watching them, my heart full in a way I never thought possible. Today marked exactly 1 year since that day, the day Jessica pushed me, the day my father struck me, the day I went into labor, and the day my son came into the world. It was the day my old life ended, and a new one quietly began. "Vanessa?" Stephen smiled, nodding toward the table. "Ready to sing?" I nodded, tears already forming as we gathered around Leo. We sang softly, not loudly, not for show. Just for him. For us. "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Leo." He clapped and squealed as Stephen blew out the candle for him, then helped him poke a tiny finger into the frosting. Laughter filled the room. As I lifted Leo into my arms, I felt a wave of reflection settle over me. A full year had passed. A year of change, healing, and rebuilding. A year of letting go of the pain and stepping fully into the joy I had once thought I didn't deserve. I looked at the photo on the side table, the one from the day we left the courthouse, me holding Leo, Stephen's arm wrapped around my waist. My eyes in the photo weren't sad. They were sure.
Proud.
"He'll never know that kind of pain," I whispered, kissing Leo's soft hair. "He'll grow up with love, not control. With safety, not silence." And in that moment I knew. I hadn't just given birth to a son. I had given birth to a new version of myself, someone who no longer begged for love from people who never knew how to give it.
Today was his birthday.
But it felt like mine, too. Because the past didn't know me anymore. And it never would again. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories every week. Thank you for watching.